If there's one generalization we can make about the American people, it is that they hate paying taxes. This unifies us in a way that makes baseball or apple pie positively wilt in comparison. But it was not always this way. Back when economic inequality was lower, there was much less resentment about paying taxes. According to What Americans Really Think by public opinion analyst Barry Sussman, discontent about taxes coincided with the growing distrust of government since the 1970s. According to Sussman, the American public resents a system that gives special privileges to the wealthy few. Americans feel overtaxed despite the fact that, objectively, our tax burden is much lower than what citizens in other countries pay. One way of calculating a country's overall tax burden is by comparing the percentage of tax revenue to GDP, a nation's total economic output. As you might expect, countries like Denmark and France top the list, with total tax revenue making up about 50% and 45% of their respective GDPs. Sweden is around 43%, Norway at 38%. Meanwhile, the US is below 26%. The Scandinavian countries are considered high effort, high collection, meaning that their governments make sure they capture a much larger share of potential tax revenue than us. The US tax system is considered low effort, low collection, meaning that there's a lot more our government could do to bring in tax money, but does not. As T.R. Reid summarizes, in terms of the overall tax burden, Americans pay less. In terms of specific taxes, income tax, sales tax, gasoline tax, and so on, American rates are almost always lower. One reason that most Americans feel overtaxed is because the rich are so undertaxed. There's a brilliant distinction in the American tax code between earned income and unearned income. Earned income is the wage you take home from your job. You earned that. Unearned income is money that effortlessly rolls in from property or investments. Rich people are, of course, the ones who get the lion's share of unearned income. They don't have to do anything to get paid except hold valuable items like stock or real estate. Economists use a French word to describe rich people who make lots of money in this way: rentiers, meaning they make their money by extracting rent from what they own. During the mid-20th century, the period of extremely high tax rates on the wealth, the rich were considered rentiers. As mid-20th century gave way to late 20th century, around the time Milton Friedman was rising to prominence, economists changed their attitudes towards the rich, buying into the idea that wealth was actually created by hard work and ingenuity. Basically, great wealth transitioned from being perceived as unearned income to earned income. Supposedly, America was now a knowledge-driven society, which meant there should be no distinction between the rich and the super rich. This meant that all of the rich in the US deserved to keep what they earned, no matter how they earned it, and high taxes would only be a disincentive for hard work and creativity. As these attitudes changed, so did American tax rates. Roger Martin gets specific in the Harvard Business Review, describing how this pretext made it easier to slash taxes for the rich, saying, "This is exactly what happened. In 1982, the top rate dropped to 50%, but kicked in at 101,000. By 1988, it had fallen to 28% and kicked in at 29,000, which meant that America effectively had a flat tax of 28%. Since then, the top rate has drifted up to 39.6%, kicking in at 220,000, but the progressivity of the system is still extremely modest. Instead of taxing the rich, like we should, the United States government borrows from them. How do they do that? By selling treasury bonds. As you know, the federal deficit is the amount of money spent by the government that is not covered by taxes. The way the deficit gets patched over is through the sale of treasuries. Every treasury bond earns interest, paid for by us, the taxpayers. So instead of taxing the rich, we borrow from them and pay them interest. If we tax the rich more, this would not be necessary. We should tax the rich, not borrow from them. Please give us a like, follow, favorite, and subscribe to my free Substack. Let's make them pay.